I've been invited today. Well, first of all, it's my pleasure to be here with all of you, and I'm hoping that we leave here today with nuggets that can make a difference after this session. So I'll just share my slide and we'll jump right into the topic for today so that we can finish on time and you can still have a good evening. So I've been invited to speak about the power of decision-making within the family. And the truth is that this is a very, very, very important topic for everybody, okay? And the first question I think we should be looking at today is why we should learn about decision-making. And the reason is very simple. It's the most important job of any individual, whether in the family or in the place of work, you know, and all of us are leaders in one place or the other, okay? And decision-making has significant consequences, okay? Because who you are, how successful you, happy you are, significantly depends on making the right decisions, okay? So think about decisions like who you marry, the kind of schools you send your children to, the sort of jobs you decide to take, of business you may decide to enter, you know, the sort of values you wish to inculcate in your children, because, you know, sometimes people think, oh, you know, this is how they do it these days, so let's be, okay, or let's all be friends. And at the end of the day, you find that you can't control the monster that you hate, or the other extreme, to be so strict that, you know, once the child is out of the house, maybe goes to university, the first year they go crazy because they don't know, they've never tasted freedom. So it's really a very important topic. And today we're going to be looking at how to ensure that we make the right decisions, because there are several benefits of making good decisions, okay? To start with, a more successful personal life and career path. We also reduce wasted time and money, okay? Of course, less hassle, worry, and regret, better financial returns, but more importantly, in the family setting, a happier family setup, okay? There are many people today who are damaged by the way they've been brought up in their homes, and subconsciously they transmit that damage without realizing it until they're brought in, until they're given insight into it. So we need to be sure that we are not creating damaged people, okay, whether between the spouses or the children, because we're making the wrong decisions and we don't know how to go up and making decisions. So like everything in life, we learn to talk, we learn to walk, we learn to read, we learn to write. We also need to learn how to make good decisions. But before I even go into why we are afraid of making decisions, let me use some current examples just to show you how, you know, some things that appear good can actually be bad. You know, right now, for example, we're talking about minimum wage, and everybody is shouting, yes, yes, minimum wage. But as, you know, somebody pointed out, when we had the Udoji Awards in the 70s, what happened? People were actually worse off. Why? Because once the market heard that people had more salaries, all the people couldn't afford to buy what they were buying before the salaries went up. And so this is and of course, everybody's thinking that once they agree to the minimum wage, a good thing has happened. So that's an example of how an apparently good thing may not be good. Rather, what you should be looking at are, hey, what are the issues that are creating these price surges, okay? If we had better roads, they remove all those checkpoints, okay? Because what minimum wage means is that if you have a maid working for you that you are paying 40,000 naira, you can be taken to jail because you're supposed to pay her that 100 and something thousand naira. Because that's the minimum acceptable wage. How many people can afford that? So again, this is an example of how what appears good can actually, if you look at the if you look beyond the short-term consequences, you find that it can actually be not so good in the medium to long term. Okay, so that's just one example. Now, we all know that we all want to make good decisions, but sometimes when many of us become indecisive, okay, why are we afraid? Sometimes because we are afraid, we are thinking that it's going to expose us. We don't want to be responsible for a bad decision. Other times, it's because we're confused. We're not sure what to do, okay? And we're afraid of, maybe losing large sums of money, or I don't know, we want to be children. In the case of the family, our children, we don't want our children to be angry with us. Okay, some parents actually believe that they should be friends with their children to the point where the children are actually controlling the parents. Okay, so in the office setting, one is afraid of stepping on the wrong toes. We all know the right thing to do, but we think, just let me not offend the MD by saying we should go and buy from a cheaper person. Let's just buy from his sister who is not very expensive, for example, Or in the family setting, as I said before, you rather than be a parent, you want to be a friend to your children. So we're making decisions in all ramifications of our lives, and they all have consequences, both the decision that is made and as well as how they are implemented. Okay, so it's definitely something that we have to learn about. Now, we make decisions when we're faced with challenges or problems, and there are mainly two types of problems. We have the structured problems, which deal with machines and operational issues, and then the non-structured problems, which deal with human beings. In the case of the structured problems, they have a known sequence of operations. If you want to use your washing machine, there's a way to use it. If you want to use your computer, the sequence of actions to do, depending on what action you want to take. And typically, techies or technicians deal with these sort of issues. But when we look at the non-structured problems that involve people, have no prepackaged solutions. So, for instance, your first child comes. You say go to school and the child is happy. You say don't go to school, the child cries. In fact, if you want to punish the child, you say you're not going to school tomorrow, the child is crying. Second child comes, and you think that is like a factory that's bringing out the same type of children. And you find that this particular one doesn't want to go to school. So when you say you're not going to school tomorrow, it's actually very happy. Okay, so every child needs to be studied. And then your actions in terms of molding that child needs to be based on the character that child has come to the world with. Okay, so the personality the child has come to the world with. So there are no fixed ways of solving problems that involve people. It's important that we get to understand the person and understand what it is that we want to, achieve, so that we work towards that goal. Okay? And so parents spend at least 80% of their time making decisions that will affect their lives and the lives of their children forever. Okay? Everything you do is going to influence how your child ends up becoming, both in society as well as in their own homes, and how they will deal with their spouses and their children. So it's really important that we're doing the right thing and making the right decisions. So first of all, let's get some insights, okay? Let's even try to understand, because maybe we don't think about it, we just take decisions on impulse, okay? And we think we've done the right thing, okay? But let's look at some of the shortcomings of those impulsive decisions that we may be taking sometimes. They've been studied and they have names. So you have the best of few, okay? This is when you choose the best of few available alternatives. So for example, you're thinking with your spouse, what school should our children go to? And then you restrict your choices to the ones in your neighborhood, subconsciously, maybe out of convenience. But what if the schools in your neighborhood are not the best for your child? Okay, so imagine if you're abroad, for example, and the ones in the neighborhood, in America, many people are homeschooling because they realize that sending their children to school is a risk of losing the children because of all these, comprehensive sexuality education curriculum that they're now practicing, and all kinds of, things that they're teaching the children. So the point here is, are you limited to the schools, the 3 or 4 schools around you? Or should you rather be looking at the kind of values you want inculcated in your child? So many times we restrict ourselves to the few convenient choices around us, okay? Or they may say, oh, you've come of age, you need to marry a wife. And then 2 uncles bring you 2 ladies. And you're cracking your head, which one to choose, rather than asking yourself, what is your life's aspiration and what do you desire in a life partner? Such that when you've decided that you want, maybe first of all, a good Christian woman, one with a calm character, one that is financially independent, okay? Armed with these criteria, when each uncle brings what they think will be good for, sorry, not what, the person they think will be good for you, you know what to look out for. And maybe the two of them are not actually good for you. So rather than kill yourself trying to make a decision between these two, you may just decide, I haven't found what I'm looking for. Or that will only happen if you have, as I said, explained before, understood where you're going and the kind of partner that will take you there. Of course, giving room in your head for asking God also who it is that He has ordained for you to bond with. Okay, so there's no need to decide in a hurry when the decision can wait till more options are analyzed. The second track we tend to fall into is routinization. Everybody is doing it this way, okay? Everybody's teenage daughter is now wearing hot pants. So it's not a strange thing if our daughter also wears hot pants, okay? Everybody's child has a mobile phone. So it's not a strange thing if our children have mobile phones. Everybody's sending their children for slumber parties. So it's not a strange thing. No. We have to ask ourselves, what are the values we want our children to grow up with? Okay, so we've got to be careful not to do what everybody's doing. Here in Lagos, I don't know how it is in Enugu, but there are estates where people are relocating, and it's as if you don't relocate, it's because you are poverty-stricken. And so rather than think about the consequences of, and many times when they relocate, it's the mother and the children, and the husband remains in Nigeria. Okay, and we've seen things like, of course, the man is scared to go home to an empty house every night. He goes out for drinks with his friends. When those ones are going home to their families, they just stay back, in the hotel, have a few more drinks. Probably a pretty girl comes and sits beside him, and next thing he stays in the hotel overnight. So a lot of families are being damaged because, of this separation. And so many people are not thinking about the consequences of splitting the families before they decide to relocate. It's more about what everybody in the estate is doing is the in thing, so we go along. So we need to sit back and really take a decision. What's our plan for this family? Okay, what are the consequences of making this decision? What will happen to us? Okay, we have cases of children saying, Daddy, because you're not here, I didn't win my race, or I didn't pass my exams. When are you coming? And the man is, totally destabilizing. And I'm not giving a random example. I'm actually with name and surname in my head as I speak these examples. So we're seeing that routinization could be a dangerous way to take decisions. Now, parameter delegation. Okay, this is when we depend on the selection, other people's selection. I've already given this example of please help me find a wife or please help me find a husband. Okay, well, the person you're asking to help you find a wife or husband has different parameters in their heads. So if you are a brother, you're saying, "No, please, when I come to Nigeria, please get a wife ready for me," you may end up being in trouble later on in the long run. So let's be careful. Let's have our own parameters before we decide, before we take on somebody else's parameters. So having looked at those examples of routine decision-making, what does an effective decision-making process consist of? Okay. I'm going to elaborate on this, but this is just a roadmap I'm going to give you at this point. The first thing we need to do is to focus on what is important. In other words, what is our goal? What's the objective? Okay. And there's a logical process to this. Once we know what our objectives are, we have to ask ourselves, okay, so if my objective is, for example, I want to have a Christian family. What does a Christian family mean? It means that we put God first. It means that I need a wife that's also, God-fearing. It means that we're going to be open to life. It means that we have to teach our children to pray, raise godly offsprings. It means that we have to be careful what they see, what the children see, and the schools they go to. Okay, I too have to be, as a spouse, have to be careful. The husband has to be careful about the kind of jobs I do. As a wife, I have to be careful to make sure that the job I do is not going to take me totally away from the family, because we have decided that we want. Oh, sorry, what happened to my slide? Share went off.
We can still see it.
You can still see it. Okay, I wonder what happens. Okay, I think an update has come onto my system without me. You can still, oh, I'm not seeing my slide anymore. Let me just try and get it up. I don't understand what's going on. It just disappeared from my end. And it's asking me to share, but you're saying you can see it.
Maybe you should share again if it's...
Yes, I'm actually trying to share it again, but then it's disappearing. This has never happened before. This is hold control to select multiple windows. Okay, I see. Okay, yeah, I'm back on track. Okay, so so I was saying that once we have our objective clear, the next thing is logically say, okay, what's the consequence? How do I achieve this goal? Or how do I want to achieve this goal? What are the criteria I must have in mind? Okay. And then usually for everything we decide to do, there's both the qualitative dimension as well as the quantitative dimension. In other words, okay, so if I decide that I'm going to, okay, let me see which one now. Okay, we started talking about the kind of family that we want. Okay, we want a Christian family. We want one that's, we want to bring the children up in a way that we want them to go to good schools. We want them to have a good education and want them to go to a school that has good morals. Such schools are not exactly cheap. So it means that we have to make sure that I'm working towards a good income, because it means I have to be able to pay the school fees. Qualitative means that I have to make sure that they're getting good Christian formation in terms of choice of school for them, for example, So again, with this in mind, okay, we know our boundaries. So for instance, if I earn 500,000 a month, I can't be looking at a school, for instance, where the school fees alone is 1 million for the year. I've not thought about the school uniform. I haven't thought about rent, feeding, and all the other things that one has to do, and of course, healthcare. So obviously, it means that I have to put my boundaries based on what I can actually afford. So what are the schools within the range of what I can afford? As obvious as this will seem, the people that actually put themselves into trouble because they want to look like the Joneses. My kids must go to the school of certain people, and they go as far as taking a loan that could put them in trouble when if they lose a job or their jobs or whatever. So let's be careful. I mean, as I said, there's a quantitative dimension to what we want. Or, we decide to, marry somebody that has such high taste that we're on high jump all the time. I mean, there was a time that had this WhatsApp videos talking about don't kill yourself, do what you can manage, talking to the men about that. So let's keep these things in mind. So, and once we have this criteria in place, it becomes easier to analyze the various alternatives, okay? And then to choose from the various alternatives, which one is best suited to our situation, and then it's easier to articulate an action plan to move forward. Okay, so basically what I've said so far is that it's important to be clear about your objective, what you seek to achieve. It's important to look at more alternatives than the few that are available to you. And if you're going to analyze those alternatives, it's important to look at the short-term and the long-term consequences of those alternatives, okay? As well as, and the way to look at it is to establish criteria, okay? What are the things that I'm looking for, okay? I may say, using examples, but it could be the other way around too, okay? So they say to you, or is a lady trying to decide who to marry? She has many suitors, okay, coming to her, okay? How do you choose a suitor? So this one is very rich, is well studied, but doesn't go to church, or, but at the same time, the family is well known, if money will not be a problem, okay? On the other hand, this one doesn't have too much money, but, he's very dedicated, he's a good Christian, and his family is not so well known. The other one, well, he's hardly ever around. he works abroad, he comes home twice a year for 2 weeks, and but they say he's looking for a wife in Nigeria. He doesn't want the wife to follow him where he is. He'll be coming here to meet her. So, but at least, he's looking for your hand. And which one do you choose? Okay, so of course, the person has to say, who am I? What do I want? And based on my criteria, be able to decide which one is, the most suitable suitor, not for just now, for the short term, a big wedding look good, but in the long term, are you going to be happy? Will you have a good marriage? Okay, and all of that. So, and they're always trade-offs. Okay, we're going to look at all of this in a bit more detail now, but I just want us to summarize what we've talked about so far. Okay, so the most important thing is to ensure that your final decision meets the goals you set out to achieve, which means that at any point in time, you have to ask yourself, what am I trying to achieve? Okay, sometimes we focus on trying to solve the problem that we are experiencing, but sometimes that problem can cloud our objective. Okay, so for example, somebody can say, oh, I don't have a job. Okay, your problem is not just to get a job, your problem is to earn an income. So if you focus only on getting a job, you will never think about, oh, besides getting a job, I can also become an entrepreneur, for example. Okay, or I could even get something that's a remote job that could help me work from home rather than go to the office as I'm used to. So yes, the problem of unemployment is there, but the real objective is, how do I earn a good income to take care of my family? It could be through a job, it could be through entrepreneurship. Okay, so again, it's important that we learn, when we see a problem, okay, ask, why is this a problem for me? Because when you ask why several times, you get to the real objective that you are trying to achieve. Okay, why do I want to get married? Because I want to have children. I want to bring up godly children. I want to have, continuity. So if this is what you want, what do I need to put in place to have godly children? And then you start thinking of the kind of spouse you want to have, etc. So that's the way it goes in terms of decision making. So that's in a summary. Now, I've shown you, in a sense, what the components are in the decision-making process. But in real life, the truth is that we're strongly influenced by our values. Okay? Things like if peer pressure matters more to us, playing to the gallery, looking really good, okay, we find ourselves, choosing to do the things that make us look good as opposed to the right things that will lead us to us having the objectives that we originally set out to achieve. Okay, like the example I gave before of choosing to relocate, even though that can split the family and end up breaking the marriage, as is happening right now. Nobody's talking about these issues, but we're here in Lagos, we're planning to have a webinar talking about things one needs to think about before they decide to relocate, because we're seeing the consequences of that big time right now. Some marriages that are shaky, when they get over there, that's the opportunity for the woman to say, look, pack your bags and go. We're now in America, I have strong rights, I've had enough of your rubbish, and there's no longer any buffer to try to make things work out. So these are things that one needs to really consider. Am I going to go? Am I going to stay? If I'm going to stay, why am I staying? If I'm going to go, why am I going? What's the consequence of the family in the short and long term? Okay. What school am I choosing for my child? Many times we choose a school based on where our colleagues are sending their children to. Okay. We say we prefer a status symbol as opposed to the moral standing of the school. There's a new school now in Lagos called, I think it's in Abuja, Charterhouse. I think the school fees is about 24 million naira. They only wanted 200 kids, but they have a waiting list of 1,000 children. Okay, of course, it has all the infrastructure you can imagine, even more than what you will find in many schools abroad. But the question is that all that matters? Okay, and our parents thinking about this. So, and again, of course, the risk is there. I remember when I was doing a stint as a visiting faculty at Yale, it was impressive to see that there was so much danger around an Ivy League school because, of course, rich kids go to that school. And so all the drug peddlers were all around. So there were so many security measures all over the place. Now, somebody who has never thought about drugs before in their lives you come to Yale and it becomes the commonplace thing because who do drug traffickers sell to? Rich kids. Okay, so these are things we need to think about. Have I, inculcated enough values in my children for them to be able to weather the storm when they go to these sort of schools, for instance? Or are there other schools in the area that balance morals as well as academics? That would be a better thing, a better option for my child. Okay, so it's really important that we think about this. Okay, so again, another example could be marrying a God-fearing woman versus a rich and beautiful pagan, or vice versa, marry a God-fearing man versus a rich and handsome pagan. So these are sometimes, and we see, unfortunately, we see that most people go for, the one that looks materially stronger, and that's why we're now having like somebody was saying, that when they did the analysis of divorce, while it was 50% amongst the non-Christians, the rate was, I think, very close, I think 48% amongst Christians. So there's almost no difference in the rate of, divorce between Christians and non-Christians. Simply because even though people are Christian, at the end of the day, each person's personal value takes over. And I'm bringing this now up because at the end of the day, we're going to now look at the process in more detail, but we have to be very careful to ensure that we have the right values in place because our values many times overwhelm this process that can lead to better decisions. Okay, so I have another example here that can happen at work. You could be a very good doctor that everybody wants to treat them. And then maybe you have a very wealthy patient who says, no, only this doctor must treat me and I want an abortion. What do? Are you going to and then maybe the hospital says, the income I can get from this patient is a lot. And if you say no, that I'm going to fire you, are you going to go ahead and do it? Okay, so these are real life examples where if our values are strong enough, we'll find that we're ready to lose the job than to lose our soul by helping a woman kill an innocent child, for instance. Okay, and then my last example, and this was a film my son. It was very, very touching, where a man who had been looking for a job for a long time, he had a pregnant wife, and he finally got the job. So within the first month of working in the office, the top bosses called him into the office and they said, look, here we do oil and we have different badges coming in. We're going to have 13 badges coming in, but we want you to record only 12. So, and if you do it, we're going to promote you. So, and of course, when you've done that, we will share the money where we're going to personally sell that one you're not counting, and we'll give you some money from it. So the man went home, wringing his hand because he was a very good Christian. He didn't know what to do. And so when he got home, he was so destabilized that his wife wanted to know why he was worried. And she asked, what's the problem? What's the problem? He said, well, this job I've just gotten. Yes. And the wife said, yes. He said, my bosses are asking me to do something dishonest, to record only 12 out of 13 badges of oil so that they can sell one and give me some money from it. And I know this is wrong. So the wife knew who her husband was, and she knew that, they were good Christians, but then at the same time, he was just getting a job after a long time of being unemployed, and she was pregnant, so her face dropped, and she just held his hand and put it on her stomach as per, look, we have a child that is coming. So the whole night, the man was tossing and turning. The wife too didn't sleep, knowing that her husband was very worried, because he was meant to go back to the office and give an answer to the bosses. So, because he told him to come back the next day to confirm whether he was ready to play along. So he came back the next day with his cap in his hand. He was a Mexican, it was a Latin American movie. Came back with his cap in his hand, and he said to them, and they were saying, yes, so have you decided, are you going to do as we have told you? He said, I need this job, but I'm sorry, I cannot do it. and it was waiting for them to just to tell him to get out of the office, that he, or to say that he's fired, or I don't know what. And to his surprise, they said to him, "Are you sure?" He said, "Yes, that he cannot do it, that it goes against his faith." And they said to him, "Congratulations, we have tested practically everybody in this plant, and they have agreed to do it. You are the only person who has said you will not do it. But we're looking for an honest man to give a role that was very sensitive, and we're about to give up, but now we found that person." Okay, so again, this is an example of how having positive values can influence the decision we take in a tight moment. Okay, so I have never forgotten that video, that movie since I saw it. And it's a really strong example of, making sure that our values are not just, paper values, but really genuine. Right, so let's look at in more detail so that you leave this session really knowing how to follow that process that can lead to better decisions so that we have a more successful life. Okay, and it's important to follow a systematic process because we make decisions faster, more easily, and with much better results. Now, so the first thing we need to do is to identify the problem. Okay, and this is it's not so easy. One of the questions I tend to ask people is, have you ever seen malaria? And everybody says, does she know what she's saying? How can you see malaria? But I say, no, okay, have you had malaria? And everybody says, oh yes, we've had malaria. And I say, have you seen malaria? And everybody thinks, what is she speaking about? What she's saying? How can you see malaria? And I said, no. So if you have had malaria, how did you know you had malaria? I said, well, okay, so we had symptoms. What are the symptoms? Aches and pains, headache, feeling of weakness. Okay. Now, if you have all these feelings and you take Panadol for the headaches and the pains, the aches and pains to go down, and then you take I don't know, you go to rest, you will feel better temporarily, but the fever will come back later on. Why? Because you haven't gone to the root cause of the problem. Okay? So many times what we see are symptoms, not the real problem. And we have to ask why many times so that we can identify the real problem. So if we don't identify, until we go for a test and identify that, oh, what we really have is malaria, and then we take antimalarials, we won't feel better. Okay? So the way we frame the problem matters. And so in a family, you could see your child coming home every day saying, I don't want to go to school. And you may think, oh, my child is just being lazy. But it's good to ask your child, why don't you want to? Maybe there's a bully in the school and you don't know about it, rather than just hit him on the head and say, come on, go and, Olodo, will you go and get ready for school? Or say, what do you mean? I can't give birth to a child that refuses to go to school. You must go to school, okay? And you don't know what's going on. Recently, well, not too recent, I think it was last year, it was a public, the news was in the public. A child actually died in Darwin, not so far from us here, because he was being bullied in school. Came home, they didn't take the illness seriously until the child actually died. So it's really important not to take every reluctance as, oh, this child is not serious, they don't want to go to school. Find out why are you so reluctant to go to school? Okay, what's the problem? It could be that the child is even experiencing abuse. We never know. So it's important to talk with children, no matter how young they are, rather than just pounce on them and think that they're being lazy. So it's important that we avoid confusing symptoms for problems. And then the second thing we have to ask ourselves is, what am I trying to achieve? Okay. It's important to know. So if, for example, you want a good marriage, what that means is that, because again, the truth is, for your marriage to be good, both partners have to be considerate of each other and not judgmental. So if at the beginning of the relationship, it's been established that we want to make sure that both of us are happy. What can I do to make you happy? I mean, you ask each other what you can do to make each other happy. It's easier for you to work towards achieving, that goal. And then it also helps to overcome conflict that can arise from different perspectives. Everybody, no two individuals are the same. Even amongst siblings, you see different characters. And of course, amongst two different people who come together in marriage, you have different backgrounds. Okay, so boilerplate issues need to be discussed. I mean, a question such as how many children should we have will not normally come up between two good Catholics. But it could come up, I mean, well, normally, yes, but it could still come up amongst Catholics who are not, so who don't really have too much formation. Okay? Some time ago, there was a case where the man almost killed the wife because he didn't want more children. They had 3 children, and then she said she was pregnant for the 4th, and he almost killed her. So at some point, you have to ask yourself, these talks are important. What are we trying to achieve? Okay, why do we want to stop now? Or why are we going to remain open to life? And how are we going to manage if we decide to do this? And such talks, because each person has different perspectives, can lead to better decisions than just the man deciding I'm the head of the family. I carry everything on my head and I decide everything alone and I will try and do everything alone. 2 heads are always better than 1. One of the things I always tell my students at the Lagos Business School in the MBA program is that none of us is as good as all of us. Okay? There's a reason why God said it is not good for man to be alone. And so if the 2 should become 1 and we're not making use of the other person's ideas, we're keeping ourselves ideas, short, rather than becoming ideas rich. When more than 1 person brainstorms on a problem to come up with more alternatives and not just try to resolve it with the few alternatives that can occur to 1 person. The next thing is, okay, what criteria am I going to use to analyze this decision we're trying to take? Okay, so if, for example, somebody says, look, I only want 2 children because the economy is, I said, no problem. But we know that, one, we shouldn't offend God. Okay, we can't practice anything but the natural family planning. Okay, so by the time we list the conditions, you may just realize that, hey, it might be better for us to just, be open to life and do our best to try to make the, to earn what it is that's required to run the family. Okay, so when you look at criteria, looking at conditions, which all alternatives you're thinking about must meet in trying to attain established objectives. Okay, in trying to meet your established objectives. Okay, so again, you focus on what is most important. What are the things I must keep in mind as we decide to think about the future of our family? Do you want to, let's go back to that example. Do you want to remain in Nigeria? Do you want to go abroad? Okay, what's the most important thing for us? If we say the criteria is family unity, can the whole family go now? Can we all afford to go now? If we all go now, what will we do? Do we have something that we can do? Or rather, should we stay here while the man goes first, and then when he's more stable, we all join? Whatever the case may be, the key thing is that you understand what you don't want to compromise. And those facts become your criteria, okay? We cannot go unless we can live in a good place where we can take our children to good schools, because if you go there as a family and you're struggling and you're in a poor neighborhood which has bad schools, how will the children cope? So these are the facts that will help you know if it is actually good for the family for you to relocate or not. Okay, and even if you are here, okay, it will also help you make better decisions. Okay, so are you going to go to a particular school because they speak with an accent, they have flowers everywhere, they have British teachers or whatever? Or are you going to go to a school because they have a good balance of strong academics and strong morals and strong discipline? Okay. I had a friend who went to a school where they told her, this is where the children throw their clothes. We don't let them wash, you wash for them. This is where they play. This is where they have access to the internet anytime they want. By the time they finished telling her all the things, thinking that they had impressed her, she came back telling me, can you imagine where I was going to go? And saying, what they want to destroy the life of my children for me after all the hard work I've done at home. Of course, she didn't take her children to that school because she knew it was very clear to her the kind of upbringing she wanted her children to have. Okay, there's an age for mobile phones. Okay, the mobile phone is too powerful for a young child that doesn't understand boundaries yet. So if we have this criteria in mind, we don't get carried away by one superficial thing or the other. And of course, this is even more important when the decision you are trying to take is of great importance and there are many alternatives to choose from. You need this criteria to help you filter which alternative is best for you. So in looking at in generating alternatives, it's very important, okay, that we hold brainstorming sessions, whether it's a professional decision or a family decision. Bring in the children, okay, and it's a way to train them also. That's like, in a sense, democracy in the home. Of course, not all decisions are democratic decisions because children don't know best, but as much as possible, involve them, okay? We're trying to make a decision as to which house to buy or which business to go into or which school to send you to, okay? You don't have to go with their choice, but at least bring them into the discussion. And then help them see why their suggestion is a good one or a not so good one or even a bad one. Because that also helps them begin to learn to analyze and also think through alternatives when they're trying to make decisions in their own personal space. So involvement is key. And involvement is so important that, there's the first reason why involvement is key is because it helps to uncover, sorry, this is the type where it should be uncover our blind spots. Because as I said before, none of us is as good as all of us. We don't see everything, and many times we have only one or two ideas that we're choosing from in our heads. But once we can state the objective and we throw the matter open, ideas that would never have occurred to us are being suggested, and there's more to choose from, okay? I recall in the business sense, teaching this in class, and then somebody came back to class the next day, smiling from ear to ear, saying, I tried it and it worked. And typically, when he has a project, he just tells his staff, Titi, go and do this, Bayo, go and do this, Kemi, go and do this. But that day, he just said, look, this is what the client wants. How do we get it done? In his mind, he had already budgeted about 2.5 million for that project. And he said it was a youth corper in his office that showed him how he could accomplish that project with the same quality of work done with only 250 naira. So he saved 2.75 million. Sorry, he saved, no, not 2.75 million, 2.25 million. Okay? So at the end of the day, the best result came from the least expected person, the recently engaged youth corper, who knew a loophole, a cheap source of the materials that they needed to, that they could use to, fulfill that project. So you'll be very surprised, that your children may give you the best ideas. And then in terms of executing ideas, when the idea only comes from the top, from mommy and daddy, people are reluctant. But when it is a collective family idea, okay, you see everybody struggling to make sure that, that they fulfill it. So for example, maybe Lent comes along and you say, okay, in this family, all of us must fast. You can be sure that everybody's going to dodge and eat something. But when you say, okay, what should we do for Lent? And everybody's saying, okay, you know what, let's give up ice cream, or let's give up, you know what, and then say, and at the end of Lent, we're going to make Jesus happy, and maybe Jesus too will give us a gift or whatever. It becomes like a fun thing for the whole family to do. Nobody feels imposed upon, everybody's doing it happily, or we say, okay, we will eat ice cream only on Sundays instead of on maybe it's a goodie day, Wednesday and Saturday, in addition to Sunday. We say, okay, we'll keep it for Sunday alone, So, or somebody can say, oh, it's too much for me. Why don't we just take a less than we would normally have and offer that the rest up, and then maybe next year we can increase it, gradually, whatever the case may be, but just basically by involving everybody is happy to implement. And the reason why this is very important is that, they say culture is strategy for breakfast. You may have a good decision, but if people don't feel involved in it, they're not going to want to go along with it. Okay, so that's important to keep in mind. And then, of course, as I said before, once the alternatives are on the table, we begin to analyze it using the criteria. Okay, And that criteria is where when we get to look at both the qualitative things. Okay, so we're saying you should go to, I don't know what, Hill Range School versus, I don't know what school, maybe let's say Atlantica School in Enugu. Okay, so why do you want to go to, why do you prefer to go to Atlantica? Because all my friends are going there, and because they go horse riding every month in that school, while in Hill Range they don't go horse riding. And because all my friends from primary school say that the teachers, they are very cool and they play with them, they even let them smoke cigars, you know. So that's why I want to go to that school, because they allow you be you, they allow you, do you, they say, okay, they allow you do you, they go horse riding, and you can smoke if you want to smoke, and then they allow you do you. Okay, so you ask them, what do you want to become in future? Say, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a pilot, I want to be, okay. For you to be an astronaut, what do you need to do? Okay, so if you are doing you and spoken at this age, will they help? I mean, basically, as an example, will this be, will this allow you to become that person you want to be? Whereas in Hill Range, they are strict on your studies. They teach you, the child may not appreciate it, but if you explain it well, they should be able to understand it and understand why you prefer that they go to Hill Range, for example. Okay, so, and then you could say, okay, apart from that, the school fees, they're charging 5 million per semester. Okay, where's that money going to come from? So they begin to reason with you why you prefer to go to, the other school. And then, of course, there are trade-offs, usually in decisions that you make. Okay, so you may not go horse riding at Hill Range, but you will pass JAM at the first go, and then you will definitely become who you are planning to be, whether it's a pilot or an astronaut, or I don't know, a fintech guru, or whatever it is. Okay, right. So again, you look at the trade-offs. Okay, I mean, there are many times you can decide, okay, we want to buy a car. Which car should we buy? If we buy this expensive car, it means we can't afford to pay children's school fees in this particular school. Okay, and so rather than having a fight over the type of car you want to buy, you look at the consequences. Okay, so what's more important to us? Is it to have a nice car or to send our children to a good school? So that reduces the conflict between spouses, because you are now using, this analysis to understand the boundaries that you have. Okay, so always keep in mind that what you decide today would influence your situation tomorrow. And so your decisions today are informed by the vision that you have. Like I tell the entrepreneurs, or even my students in the MBA program, if you don't have a vision, when they say, let's go to club, you say, yeah, but let's go, blow $1 million, at a go. But if you had a vision to build a house and own your own home before you're 40, when they say, let's go to club, you say, let me take a brain check, because you're thinking about that million you would have blown, and you're thinking about, the doors of the house that you are building, I'd rather put those doors and just go and blow, So again, that long-term thinking is so key as we try to make decisions today. Okay, and sometimes, spouses can be accountability partners. Okay, maybe the man is being subconsciously influenced by peer pressure. Oh, my friends are driving a Range Rover, I'm driving Infinity. Why am I still driving this old car? And if as a spouse, the wife is just saying, no, don't do it, he could get angry and still do it. But when you remind him that, but we are planning to send our children to this school, and we said, well, we're going to save for it. Okay, if you get this today and we don't send that child to this school, we want to influence that child in the future. And if that doesn't do well, who will look after us in our old age? So helping each other to keep it real. Okay, or you want a big wedding for our marriage, eh? Okay, good. So when we finish with this big wedding, how are we going to live afterwards? Why don't we have a normal, nice small wedding now, so that we can live comfortably, and when the children come, we have enough to take care of them. So by the time we look at the trade-offs or the consequences of going one way or the other, it's easier to do the right thing. But if we don't think about the trade-offs, and we may find ourselves going along with our whims. And then, of course, there are always uncertainties that go with different decisions, okay? And so the way to manage those uncertainties is to have contingency plans, okay? If I decide that I want to go into business, I could say, okay, to my spouse, you continue working so that if this business doesn't work, we can fall back on on your salary. Okay? I know a couple that had the wife remain in the bank working and maintaining the family while the guy was trying to build his architectural firm. Today, the man earns 20 times more than the wife does, but there's a lot of respect between the two of them because the man knew that she held the fort while he was, building the business to what it is today. So again, it's planning together and, being able to come up with better decisions than just one person thinking alone and working alone. Okay, so, and of course, no decision is cast in stone. Change is the only thing that is constant. So from time to time, then we need to review policies as changes arise or the family situation changes. It's one thing to be alone as a couple. It's another situation when the children now come in. So, or when the children go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, so, or more. So it's important that you check with each other to say, do we need to review this plan that we had at this point in time, rather than stick to it and say, we said we'll do this before we got married. We must continue with that plan, whether or not it is appropriate now that we have, these children. Okay. So again, in a nutshell, so that we can ask questions, I want to summarize what we've been talking about. The first, in the decision-making process, we've said it's important to be systematic, so we end up making better decisions. The first thing to do is to understand the situation or the business dynamics, okay, in the we're operating in. That one person decides one thing after doing the analysis doesn't mean it is all okay for person B. I had a case I see in LBS about a man choosing a wife, and the mother was telling her son, would you like me to go to my grave without me, seeing my grandchildren? And I remember, and of course he had 3 people to choose from. One was an Osu, the other one was very rich, but she had a mad brother, and then the other one was very domesticated, beautiful, humble, but her mother was scandalous. She was separated for a scandalous reason from that everybody in the village knew about. So the question was, who should Chidi marry? Okay. And so some people said to me, well, does he need to marry? Can have children? I said, but Chidi's mother is a Christian. She will she want her only child to marry, to have children without getting married? Then somebody said, oh, the rich girl. I said, okay, this is Chidi, not Ayo. In Igbo land, you check the family for 3 things, okay? 1, is there, I'm not saying it is correct, okay? Is there madness? 2, are they Osu? Because I don't think Osu is Christian, so I don't think that's something that should be maintained. But again, there's a difference between what one thinks and what happens in practice, okay? And so, is the family strong? So these are things that will typically affect an Igbo person. So maybe in Hausa land or Yoruba land, they check for other things. But you have to look at the person involved here. The person is an Igbo person, is an only child of a Christian mother who wants to see her child married and with grandchildren. So you can't say an alternative for Chidi is to have a child outside marriage, okay? Or to bring an Osu to the mother, because in Igbo land, it means a lot. I'm not saying it's right. I don't think it's right personally, but it's what people look at, okay? So understand the context of each person. So the boundaries, okay, and not just make a decision that looks ideal, but is not ideal for that woman, because the woman may faint and die earlier than her time if she hears that her son wants to marry somebody who has madness also. But the solution to that case was that none of the 3 were suitable for Chidi's setting. But you find that people are still struggling to make sure that Chidi can choose one out of those 3. And I say, look, careful, that's a trap, the best of few. When you have other alternatives, are they the only 3 girls in the whole of Nigeria and the whole world? No, so let Chidi choose another set to choose from. Okay, so that's an example of why understanding the situation is important. Next is to identify the problem. As we said before, there's a difference between symptoms and problems. Many times, we're trying to solve symptoms and not the real problem. Okay, so ask why several times till you get the root cause of the problem so you can be solving the real problem. The next thing, also in helping you try to identify the real problem, be guided by your objectives. What am I trying to achieve? Okay, I'm trying to achieve a Christian home. Okay, I'm trying to bring godly seed to the world. Okay, so for me to do this, what kind of person do I need to be married to? As a woman, what kind of man do I need to be married to, for instance, so that I can achieve these goals? Okay, I also want a hardworking, I don't want a wife that is dependent on who only spends. I want somebody who works hard and can build with me. Okay, so all this will inform your choice. Okay, if you go back to the Chidi case, for example. Next thing is to brainstorm on alternatives. Remember, don't focus on the few that are already in your net. Cast your net widely so that you don't shortchange yourself by struggling to choose from the few that are conveniently available. And then we've said we need to have criteria, and those criteria should be both qualitative issues as well as quantitative issues. Okay, so the fact that you want a good Christian, you also want a beautiful wife, you also want somebody who is calm in nature and hardworking. It doesn't mean you want a liability. So you also want somebody who is hardworking and financially independent who can contribute to the family. So those are the quantitative issues in this particular example. Okay. And then, as we said before, consider both long and short-term consequences. Okay, don't just think about today and now, what is good for me, but what will be good for me today, in the medium term, and in the long term. Okay, so is it, like somebody said, when you're 16, you date somebody for his hairstyle, but when you're in your 30s, you choose to date or marry them for their lifestyle because you know better, So, and then when you have gone through this process, you're now in a position to take a decision, okay, and also write an action plan to execute this decision, because if you stop at the decision and you don't have an action plan, you won't achieve anything. Okay, so there's a shortcut for this and it's called PROACT. So the P stands for problem identification, the PR. The O stands for objectives. The A stands for alternatives. The C stands for the criteria, considering both qualitative and quantitative criteria. Okay, and the T stands for trade-offs or consequences, both short, medium, and long-term consequences. Okay, and then once you've got through the PROACT process, you can now take a decision and then finally write an action plan. And the best way to know that your decision is the best is to go back and say to yourself, this decision I'm taking, can it meet my objectives? Don't just focus only on the problem, because beyond the problem, what's most important are your objectives. Okay, how well does this decision meet my objectives in both the short term and the long term? Okay, so I'm going to stop here and I'll take questions if you have any. Thank you very much for listening. Sandra, you're muted. If you're speaking, you're muted. We can't hear you. All right, computer is muted.
I didn't even realize. Okay, thank you very much for, I like how you simplified it and really drilled it down to everyday experiences that we have. So thank you very much for sharing this. I think for want of time, we will take the questions. Send your questions in the chat box so that we can take it from here. But we will call on the Pure Range Principal to introduce a program that we have coming up. In the meantime, send your questions to the chat box so that we can take them quickly. Mr. Sevi.
Yeah. Can I be heard?
Yes, please, we can hear you.
Okay, but I can't see myself.
So type in these questions, okay?
I can't see myself.
We can see you.
You can see me, but I can't see myself. Okay, yes. So good evening all. Good evening. Thanks a lot for attending this program. It's been great. Thank you so much, Dr. Onwuegbuzie. Okay, so we have a program that you can say, in a sense, is an offshoot of the Parents First activity. When Professor Jude Madu gave us a talk on parental authority, some lady asked, why don't you have this for for kids? Why don't you have some activity like this for kids? Is there any plan? And that really, it was like a coincidence, because that plan, a plan that could address that kind of concern, was already in the offing, So it makes a lot of sense that while we are trying to become better on our own and trying to help our kids to become better, there's also an additional support from a forum like this. So what we have come up with is character training for kids. Character training for teens, not for kids. Okay, teens, if you call a teen a kid, he will get very angry. So character training for kids, which is going to start on the 10th of August. It's a one-year program running once every week on Saturdays. And it is online, just like this, for 1 hour. It's going to be very interesting and rooted in philosophy. Philosophy in the sense of helping them to think, helping them to understand what things mean, and also to be a bit more rooted in what you can call nature. What is the nature of things? How are things supposed to be? Just like Dr. Onwuegbuzie kept on saying, do you do things simply because others do them or because they have some value in themselves? So it's divided into 3 modules. The first, addressing man himself. What is a man? What is a human being? What is the nature of a human being? What are the characteristics of a person? Why do we say a person has dignity, and so on? And then the second module will now address morality and virtues. So in other words, having understood myself, how am I supposed to comport myself? Of course, there are many details to this. Then the last module has to do now with social life. How do I relate with other people? Man is not an island. So it's actually a comprehensive study of philosophical anthropology, but toned down to their level. The ages we are looking at is from 13 to 16. So more or less, kids who have just finished JS3 now to SS2. So it's something they can do while they are still in school and also while they're on holidays. Between the models, there will be something like 2-3 weeks break. And then at the end, they are going to have a project. They're going to do something to show that they have learned. And then it is going to be certified. In fact, we are very lucky because an institute, IWFI, the Institute for Work and Family Development, has just offered to certify it. In fact, to shed some more light on this institute and on what their certification would mean for the kids, Adebayo is here. Adebayo, if you are here, maybe you can just throw some light on IWFI and what they could do, what their certification could mean for the kids that participate in this program. Now, before he takes over, just to mention that I have already put on the chat the link to apply if you are interested. The cost is 180,000 naira for the whole year per kid. But if you have more than one child coming, the second one pays only half. If there's a third one, he also pays half. So only the first child pays 180,000. So it's like 60,000 per 6 months, or per module, since there are 3 modules. And then it is open to both boys and girls, so it's for all kids. I say this because it's an all-boys school, and people might think that it's just for boys. No, it's for boys and girls. And actually, a number of people have begun to apply. And of course, being online, it means that there are no borders. We expect kids from all over the world. Okay. So please, Adebayo, can you unmute and talk to us? Adebayo.
Okay, so we're still expecting questions. If
Yes.
in the absence of, okay.
Okay, well, has he stepped out? He's here.
Oh, he's here.
Yes, I've asked you to unmute. Otumba. Otumba, please unmute and speak. And anyway, I think we can have the questions. If he comes on, then he can talk at the end. Otherwise,
okay, so we have the link for the training for character development. I'm particularly excited because I have kids that age range. So I'm excited to have that happen. So thank you for bringing it our age range. We're excited. Then our question, Dr. Henrietta, is how do you, sorry, okay. My question is, how does one mentor boys or youth generally in positive decision making, especially in a world where the youth want to hammer and make quick money in an unconventional way?
So again, it goes through a process, okay? Letting them understand the consequences of going the unconventional way and the consequences of going the conventional way. And then role models make a lot of difference, okay? So I remember seeing Dangote telling people, look, it took me 30 years to get to where I am today. There's no shortcut, okay? So they need to see role models, but they're also young millionaires these days. I have a 25-year-old in a class where the minimum turnover is 50 million, 100 million. And when he told me in fact, when he told me it was 25, I was shocked because, of course, about 25, the guy looks like a man. And to my surprise, he pointed out two others in the class that were also his age range. So, but you could see that, he started out as a houseboy, went into real estate, and then he had some bad experiences, but by doing the right thing, he has made a lot of money. So they need to see positive role models. Example is always more compelling than preaching. No matter what you say, they will say, it's in your time. This is our time. We are woke, So it's by first helping them see the consequences. Yes, you may look in the short term like you've made money, but in the long term, you will never be respected. You can be caught. Your reputation is priceless. Once damaged, you can't regain it, and you can't be seen as a respectable person in society. And then what will your children tell you? How will you make your children feel in public? And what would they start pointing to them as the children of that criminal who was in prison? How will they feel? So they need to understand the consequences, both short-term and long-term. I think those will help.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Thank you very much. I think in the absence of...
So is there a chance, I'm seeing a second question. Is there a chance of packaging such a course for borders? Some kids do not have the opportunity to study from home. Okay, I think that's referring to the course that...
even though it still boils down to what you said as our choice of school, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so should I answer that?
I think so.
Yeah, anyway, so in principle, it's for day students because then they can attend fully, because we more or less have agreed that to get the certificate, you should attend at least 80%. So a boarder can attend, but only during the holidays, except if there's an arrangement such that, since it's on Zoom, such that he's able to do it, maybe with the permission of his housemaster or some teacher in the school in whose home he could attend. So the important thing is that he attends, and then attendance will be taken, and if he makes up to 80%, he's good. So it's possible, definitely, because then he has his holidays and he continues, yes. Can I ask a question, since now that we're at it, if there is no other question? Can I ask one?
Yes, please.
Okay, so sometimes one is very much afraid of making a decision, especially when the alternatives are, each of them has its own drawbacks or its own possible disadvantages, especially because you are not really ready to face the consequences, at least as far as you can foresee. So now in that case, there's a certain attitude of, let's wait. You understand? Let's allow time to sort things out, versus what else can I do? Maybe ask somebody, maybe just, then when you start thinking that way, you get very agitated. Whereas it does happen that sometimes you just wait and actually time solves some problems. Maybe some new perspectives suddenly come up or something. So more or less what I'm asking is it advisable to wait, that kind of delays in making a decision simply because you are not ready for possible consequences of that decision?
Okay, so you're right that sometimes a delay can solve a problem, but you have to ask yourself, what is the consequence of the delay? And then you're also right when you say that sometimes all the alternatives before you still have a drawback. In that case, I think that you have to look for the lesser evil of the various drawbacks presented by each alternative, which is the lesser evil. But I would also suggest that whenever possible, okay, involve others. Honestly, none of us is as good as all of us. The men who involve their wives would have seen value in this, okay? And unfortunately, some people just feel that, you know what, you don't involve a woman in these things because men have been brought up to be macho. But honestly, please try to involve your wives because two heads are always better than one. Remember, God said it is not good for man to be alone. Okay, so, and if for any reason, maybe the relationship is not so good or maybe she's not knowledgeable in that field, involve other people. It could be your sister, it could be a good friend, but make sure it's really a good friend because sometimes people have also been stabbed by so-called good friends. But it helps when it's more than one person looking at something from just one angle, so that you can find that the last of the drawbacks are not all bad, you know, as you may be seeing them.
Okay, great. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you too. I think we're done.
Okay.
Sandra, you're muted again.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone.
Okay,
Okay, Adebayo is here.
Or
Go
Jude.
ahead, please.
Jude.
Or Jude. Jude, go ahead.
I say good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
It's been a wonderful lecture and a technical one again. It's not easy sometimes to consult or before one takes a decision, especially if one has a partner, a spouse that you know. There's some people marry and they marry maybe people who are opposites. I don't know. Sometimes it happens that one marries, finds himself marrying someone that thinks differently. But it's like when you're going right, she wants to take left, and it just happens. So what Sebastian, that question Sebastian asks, that occasionally one has to wait for time to play out and let things, you know, just sort themselves out. Because if you keep insisting on, you know, getting a good opinion or something you may think positive and you don't get it, so you may have to take individual decisions most times on certain things, as long as they're not evil or sinful. Then sometimes you consult, sometimes you don't. You take decision for the family. Once you're sure it's very, very good. But if you have a spouse that is open to dialogue and thinking things deeply, and who thinks that you also, your own ideas also can be good or are good, then it's good to consult. There's some spouses already stereotype. They stereotype their partners, and before you even consult or talk or say this is what I'm thinking, he or she is already saying something differently, and you may have clashes and disagreements often. So it's good to consult, but if you have reached the stage that you think differently, then certain things you just you take a decision and then pray it works out well. But I like the idea that we can consult someone else, you know, maybe somebody else apart from the spouse that keeps taking a different decision, you know, from what the partner is thinking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jude. I completely agree with you. And I know that unfortunately is the case in more marriages than we would prefer to have. What I would say in that case is that to start with, you know, I don't know how accepted it is in the East, but in Lagos, people have begun to accept the fact that they need to see a counselor. If one finds himself in that situation, clearly that marriage needs the help of a third party, a counselor, just so that, because again, it's good to know that you're coming home to peace and support and love. Many things one goes through in life, whether it is a trade program. I mean, we at LBS, we have the MBA program, which is very tough. If we decide to do a PhD, it is madness, you know. So, and one just, even if you're not doing a program, life takes us through a lot of ups and downs. It's important to have family support so that one doesn't go crazy. And so if one cannot discuss with a spouse, I would say that rather than live in hell, it's important that, you know, we think about counseling, okay? There are marriage counselors. Yes, one could pray, one could talk to the priest, but a priest is not always a marriage counselor. Some priests have that training, not all do. So it's good to look for a Christian marriage counselor that can help out, because it's not only for decision making, it's also for life. You know, we're talking a lot about mental health issues. That happens when people don't have enough support. You know, man wasn't meant to be alone. So that's what I would say in that regard. But obviously, if you don't have a cordial relationship, it is difficult to be involved in decision making. But you can still involve the children and close, you know, family members or very good friends, okay? Or third parties, as they say, in the multitude of counsel, there is safety. But if you have a very important decision to take, I will honestly advise that you don't just take it alone. You can even make it positioned as a third party. So I know somebody who is trying to decide on this. What do you think? Okay, just ask people so that, you know, you get ideas. But the more important the decision is, the more important it is that you involve other people. That'll be my suggestion. But I totally agree with you that it may not be possible with a spouse when the relationship is not cordial. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Chidera is also
Thank
asking, yeah. I don't know, Sandra,
No,
this is the first question. Okay. So it says, how can parents effectively balance guiding their children while allowing them to have a say in decisions? So again, it's about talking with them. Okay. If I may use a personal example, my dad did this so well. You know, he would ask you, I mean, he would even sometimes bring issues from his office home, and we would be talking about it. Or maybe he's driving somewhere and he can't find parking space, and he would ask even the last child when he was still 9 years old, what do we do? There's no parking space. I'd be very surprised that my 9-year-old brother would say, Daddy, see one there. You know, he would find one that my dad hadn't seen. Okay, so when you involve children, when they're your friend, somehow when you say no and you explain why you're saying no, they will understand. Okay, don't just say yes or say no. You say, I'm allowing you go, but you go to the club with your friends, but you must come back by 8 o'clock because it is not safe to be out beyond this time. I remember after watching, because in the movies that we used to have in our days, they would talk about people going to the movies abroad. And I would say, Daddy, why don't we go to the movies, you know, here in Nigeria? In fact, up till now, I still have it in my head that cinemas are for bad people. He would say, no, only bad people go to cinemas and good people watch videos at home, you know, and we believed. He didn't just say, no, you can't do it. He explained to us that it's not for good people. Good people don't do that. You know, bad people are the ones that go to. And in those days in Lagos, we had, you know, there was something in Yaba, Casino Cinema or something, and it didn't even look attractive. So when he said it was only for bad people, we believed. Okay, so there's a way to explain, there's an age-appropriate way to explain things to people, and they will understand. But get used to explaining why you're saying yes or no. Okay, and get used to talking with them, not only to them. Talking to them means giving instructions all the time. That alienates them from you. Okay, when you talk with them, you boost their confidence, you know, and you also help them begin to process things and understand why something is good or bad. That will be my